We're close. True, hard, full, hardcore. Hardcore to the mega. Internally coherent. All core. All right. Yeah.
He furrows his...
Hardcore. Is it though? But is it? I mean, really? No, but seriously, I'm a bit worried it isn't.
Don't be alarmed. Everything is okay. He isn't actually worried. Everything is still super hardcore. What he probably means is, it could be even more so.
To the mega! Yeah! I can route it through auxiliary. What kind of a cable does she use? 3.5 or 4.5? Oh, she uses 3.5. Yeah. The auxiliary lining is 4.5 millimeter. These two don't mix.
Oh no, we're going to be in this church forever.
Don't worry, I have an adapter for it right here. Hang on, this is a 4.5. We're all good, people!
Whoa, thank God. Adapters noticeably degrade the sound quality.
Great! Someone got through to him. Okay, let's get it all set up. Can we turn the music off, please?
Everybody! Everybody! Don't panic! I'm going to turn off the on-off for just a sec. For a special scheduled event. The on-off will be back, but we're doing something else for one moment. Alright, go tell her that Egghead is ready to rave to her tunes. And then I'll turn off the music. Yeah! Back on the case! No disgrace! Bring it down to party place! The first page of the second chapter!
Could it be? Maybe for him, you only have a chapter or two left in you. Last of the penultimate, more like.
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm still in love with the hardcore. Sometimes I just feel like anodic music is in its infancy, you know? For example, take this Arno van Eyck jam I've been pumping for the last months and will continue pumping for the rest of 51. Isn't something holding it back from being hyper? It's like it's only ultra.
I think it's super hardcore, but you're right. It's not hyper hardcore.
If anything, it sounds a bit proto, like it's not fully formed yet. You might be a moribund alcoholic and a failed cop, but you are pretty certain a thing cannot be both proto and hardcore.
Wow! Culture cop!
For a moment, you almost think he's going to put his hand down, but that would be ludicrous.
I think you might be right, but how could it become hardcore then? I know it in my heart, but cannot think it in my head. If this is not hardcore, how could anything be? No! This is the answer! What? Guys, there's something happening in his head.
As your mind works, the beat recedes from your ears. You hear your own blood pulsing through your head, nourishing your thoughts with oxygen. The rhythm is familiar. The abstract shapes swelling in the foreground have done so in vain. This is a core matter. The answer in the double kick that moves the milliliters through your mind. The dark thud is the source of all rhythm. The inspiration behind mathematics. The hardcore.
Oh yeah! He's doing it!
But you're not. This is almost certainly a matter that surpasses the limits of reason.
I know! So does mine! Uh-huh.
Yes, what is it? Okay, but think you can ask him to turn the volume down a bit? Just in case.
Maximum! Maximum is the only way!
I know it is, but Could you please turn it down just this instance? Just this one time? Maximum is not the only way, okay?
Pump it to the brick! Pump it to the hard master! There's no other way! Glue style!
Glue style? Okay, there literally is no other way. The mixing desk is glued to maximum.
See? He pumps it to the hard master. It's hopeless. Of course it is.
Yeah! Permanent enlightenment! Ray of sound!
Never mind then. Let's get on with our project. I'm going to unmute the speakers on a count of 5. Everyone ready?
Egghead pumps his hand up in the air, waiting for the beat to drop.
Born ready. Ready.
I'm ready if you two are detectives.
The lieutenant nods stoically. Not so stoically, his hand moves to the gun holster. Suddenly, your palms are sweaty. The church seems cold and large, somehow. There's tightness in your chest. Anxiety.
What? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mute disengaged.
No wind outside, no waves, no floorboards creaking. Total, continuous silence. This is unnatural. The woman looks around. In the silence, you see dust move on the floorboards. The driver of the speaker vibrates in the air and then stops. Plasterwork begins to crumble down the walls. In the silence, a low hum starts creeping up your spine. It's a song inside you, not in the speakers, not in the room. A great bass sigh in the basement of your mind. Slowly, it builds until the air around you starts to vibrate. It will devour everything. The floorboards, the glass, the streets and people. Nothing will remain.
Guys, what's going on?
This fragile world is about to break.
It's getting louder.
In the basins, the water looks like it's boiling.
Hosiana! Mother of Mega!
In his mind, a tidal wave approaching from afar, swallowing entire coastlines on its way. Salvation.
The beauty and the beat! The future of dance! Planetary!
No, Egg! It's the window!
In the corner of your eye, the lieutenant steps aside, cautiously, his eyes searching for a possible evacuation route.
The window is going to come down. No, the roof!
Cracks appear on the stained glass window. Cracks run up the wooden pillars in the dark.
Come down to earth! Love!
It's shaking the building's foundation. The floor twists. A great pulse arises in your flesh.
That's it. I'm muting it. Shit! It doesn't stop. A seal? Have you?
Yes! I've turned it off! Andre, pull the compressor! The place is gonna come down!
Fuck! I can't shut it up. The signal's passed. It's not in here. It's...
In the mixing desk now, building into a positive feedback loop. This is it. A great roar. The vault of the roof twists above you. Glass shatters somewhere near the door. It's coming down.
Egg.
I pulled the plug. It was getting too hardcore.
You did good, Egg. Most of the place seems to be intact. Fucking hell. Programmer lady, tell me you were recording that.
4 years. 22 people. Millions of reals. All that time? This is what we were up against. Just erased it. Suliswolf isn't gonna believe this.
Yeah, but did you record it though? It was dope. I think we can use it.
Yes, Andre. I recorded it. Damn, I need to send some letters now. Thank you all for doing this. Eggman, you too. And you, officer. I don't know what we've discovered, but I know what it sounds like now. That's a start.
It was very hard not to. I think you're right. There is something going on here. And you need to be very careful with it.
I promise, officer. We will not play it again. It was mathematical information from the anomaly, presented as a waveform. That's what it was technically. Theoretically, I have no idea. I've never even heard of anything like this.
A voice seems muffled in the silent church. It's your ears adjusting after the exposure.
Yes, our lead designer. And maybe some of the producers too. And some of the writers. If they're sober enough to open a transmission. They need to hear.
That it wasn't her fault. Or theirs.
They need to hear about this. Don't worry, I won't send the recording. Although I doubt they have the speakers to produce the frequency anyway. Stay here. I'm going to stay here with these lunatics. Send letters, maybe meet Suliswolf. Also devise further measurements.
I want you to know that's totally chill with us.
I don't care, but thank you anyway.
That's the best she can manage for Andre. It's quite a lot in truth. For her, at least.
Now, I have a theory to come up with. Some kind of preliminary explanation to all this. Or the letter will sound like I've lost my mind.
Yes, and we have to get back to stabilizing Martinez. Instead of demolishing it with loud bass noise of unknown origins.
You have an explanation for all this. Somewhere deep in you, you know. The person you were knows.
Yes, what is it?
You don't have to. You already have. A long time ago. These thoughts formed in you somewhere, in a long-forgotten discussion, behind a kitchen table, in the evening light. Drinking coffee and smoking, with a friend.
What? But Pale isn't here. We're thousands of kilometers from the edge.
That comforts her. She looks up into the darkness under the nave, then back at you. You have her full, undivided attention. The lieutenant's, too. He takes his glasses off.
Then what is that?
It's nothing. No, it's less than nothing. No.
Then the Pale is... But the gradient, it clearly hasn't started yet. We're here, and the Pale is not. I understand. A theory of the Pale where instead of an outer ocean, it metastasizes, like a cancer or a mold, erupting in points inside the world. According to this, how long? And information, causing data losses in the East Insulindian front. Have you considered why it's formed in a church? And also when or how it might start growing, or if it has other effects in addition to sound and data?
An intellectual hunger fills her now, casting fear aside.
I also have a question, since we are piling them on. How do you know this? I'm not doubting you. I'm simply curious as to how a detective of the RCM
Knows how to think this.
Of course! A pine wood sarcophagus, or a containment facility of some kind, built by the first settlers. I have considered the same. The bad news is there were 7 pinewood churches built in the first decade of provincial settlement. Most of them were burnt down during the revolution, or repurposed before, during the suzerain. I'm not saying all of them have one in them, but
Some of them might. A black grain hanging in the air.
you think the presence of that puncture has somehow influenced the outcome of events here? Even say software development?
She already made up her mind when she heard it. Some kind of great and uncaring force had to play a part. It wasn't only them.
I told the producers we need to go and move to a normal office building with amenities. But no, the artists like the milieu, the writers like the history. I told them. But no, normal office buildings are bourgeois.
An amateur anthropomedic police officer. I'd like to say I've heard stranger things, but I'm not sure. This is a hell of a guess, however. Well worded, I might add.
Yes, it is very interesting. But I wouldn't say you know. This is a guess. One that's going to have to be proved by anthropometric scientists.
She falls silent. The wind blows in through the hole in the stained glass window, cold and moist.
I'm going to leave that out. But the rest? Some of this I can use to start to explain this to the rest of the team. Maybe I'll sound mad, but
Man, you will certainly sound mad.
one more thing. Maybe a club for anodic music isn't the worst thing you can erect around this particular point in space.
Yeah! Once the light is on in the universe, it will never go out!
You're asking me to circuit bend onto coalition radio frequencies. You want to know, is it possible? Probably. But is it a good idea? I'm not so sure. The main difficulty will be finding an antenna powerful enough to reach those frequencies. Unfortunately, you can't exactly buy mega long-wave antennas off the shelf.
She's not joking. Even the RCM has to receive special approval from the coalition to access that kind of equipment.
I highly doubt it. That tower is barely able to transmit shortwave signals across the bay. To generate megalow frequencies, we're going to need a much larger antenna. I don't see any alternative. We're just going to have to build the antenna ourselves. Because it's a completely different class of antenna. It would be like using a high-end racing carriage where a long-distance lorry is required. We need metal, a lot of it. The taller the structure, the better. Something that is both prominent and easily accessible. If it's near a power source, even better.
That's easy. Antennas are basically just tall things, right?
No, we could not. This church is made from wood. I'm not sure you understand how radios work.
Close your eyes. Unfold your mental map of Martinez. It's morning. You're standing on the plaza before the whirling in rags. Your eye follows the tiles west. You see a bench and a few twisted, pitiful trees. Then, just water. Beyond the unkempt backyard rises a monstrous assemblage of concrete, plaster, and corrugated sheet metal. You turn around. The morning sun is blinding. You bring your hand to your brow, and a great shadow materializes before you. A towering beast, frozen in mid-air.
The dead king and his horse. It could work.
It may work, you think, but why do you feel like there may be a terrible cost?
We'll need an adequate power supply and a great quantity of cable. If we connect the cables to some of the stranded lorries, we could theoretically increase the antenna's wavelength exponentially.
Whatever ambivalence she had about your project before, she's now fully engaged in solving this technical puzzle.
It's completely ridiculous, but I believe we could transform the entire roundabout into one solid fractal antenna.
A note of awe in her voice. She's shocked and pleased by her own audacity.
Yes, very likely the largest private antenna in Revachol. I have plenty of cables and amplifiers on hand. The power supply I will secure on my own. All we require now is the radio transceiver itself. I cannot answer that for you, but I don't expect it to be that difficult. There's no shortage of radios around here. If you have real to spare, you might even be able to buy one. But it doesn't really matter where it comes from, so long as it works.
And before you ask, no, you can't have the radio from Machinima.
That sounds like a perfectly adequate radio. In the meantime, I will gather the rest of the materials. We will meet back here when you have it.
Wait. Take a longer look at yourself and how you're reflected in that slick chemical rainbow. What do you see? Metaphor. It's always metaphor. This is more important than you. That's the blood of industry you see before you. The runoff from Coal City, further down the coast. The engines of fortune once roared here. Great wealth poured into Revachol, the Delta, as did smoke, waste, sickness, life. The engines stopped. The West Revacholian industrial base was dismantled after the war. Now, extinguished coke furnaces dot the landscape, a landscape despoiled by industry. Perhaps you could dedicate your life to cleaning it up, but you're a cop. You must concern yourself with different messes. Even so, it's pretty to think. The smell of cigarettes and perfume welcomes you. The cabin inside is plastered with old movie posters. Actresses smile from the walls. There's a radio transmitter in the front and a toolbox tucked under the driver's seat. Some tools lie scattered near the pedals. There's something odd about the passenger seat. The seating fabric has been put. It takes a few moments, but eventually the transceiver slides from its greased socket mount with an eminently satisfying ching. Nearly the same sound produced by the action on a good breech loader. You can't fail to notice. As you take the transceiver in your hands, the lieutenant bites his lower lip, apparently deep in thought.
Funny, isn't it? Oh, I didn't mean that. It's just ironic that you are using the lady driver's radio to contact the very authorities you are so keen to evade.
Where the transceiver used to be, there's just a rectangular shadow now. It's about the size of a small paving stone and nearly as heavy. Now that you're looking at it more closely, you realize the various dials and meters make it look vaguely like a face. A distinctive triangular logo forms the nose. That's the mark of Estas Electronica, one of the major manufacturers of advanced radio equipment.
You've surprised me more than once during the course of our investigation, but I have to say it still seems like a remote scenario.
The movie stars are still Spero's the rusty old. The mother of...
Yes, what is it? Ah, very good. Let's see what you have. Interesting. An Esterhaus EH4, heavily customized. This is an advanced model, highly capable. I'll need to replace the frequency dial, but it should certainly work for our purposes.
She's impressed by your resourcefulness as much as by the equipment itself.
I believe that means we're ready to get started. I should warn you, once we begin setting up this antenna, we'll need to see the whole process through. There won't be any second chances, any do-overs, you understand? So if there's anything you'd like to get in order before we depart, I suggest you do it now. Ah, yes, I wasn't sure what to do about that, but then I discovered an abandoned power source down by the edge of the bay. In that case, let's move on. That's up to you. At a minimum, I would make sure you are physically and mentally prepared for an intense and difficult process. Once we begin, there can be no interruptions.
At the very least, you should make sure you're wearing a good pair of gloves.
Radio engineers typically carry overpriced solvent sprays to clean the antenna connections. But in a pinch, some common ammonia works just fine. Finally, there's the question of stimulants. Some people prefer to keep legal amphetamines on hand to help with their work. I'm not one of them, but they do exist. It is possible that technical fields attract a certain kind of personality. I haven't given it much thought. That's fine. Return to me when you're ready to go. Very good. If you'll help me with some of this equipment then.
Back across the water lab. At least we are getting our exercise in today.
And now if you'll just connect that here...
It's done. I believe we are ready.
We're ready to try at least. Please put on these headphones. There should be 2 extra sets. I've configured the channels so that only your microphone is set to broadcast, officer. We'll all be able to listen, but anyone we reach will only hear your voice. You will need to transmit your connection request while I attempt to locate the warship's public frequency. You will likely encounter some interference, but it's important to keep transmitting your request until you're acknowledged. Ready? Then it will be exactly like every other moment of every other day. I ask again, are you ready? Good. Beginning transmission. Go ahead, officer.
You're all alone out there, wandering a blasted heath, calling out to the night. But there is no reply, except for the buzzing of invisible machines. The lieutenant looks up at you with a nervous glance. Nervous for who, though, you cannot say.
Try again, officer.
Perhaps you're simply imagining it, but it seems as though you're learning to pull apart the fibers of this auditory felt. You focus on one strand in particular, one that sounds very nearly human.
Nein, Liebling, das lasse ich nicht zu. Wie kannst du unseren Jungen bloß auf einem dieser Dinger nach Brede fortschicken? Marianne hat mir erzählt, dass Oscar nicht mehr derselbe ist, seit er auf einem Luftschiff aus Graz zurückgekommen ist. Natürlich halten ihn die Psychologen für vollkommen normal, aber sie hat das Gefühl, seit seiner Rückkehr mit einem Fremden zusammenzuleben.
Something about her son going to Fredford on an aerostatic to see some psychologists. Or maybe it's the psychologists saying it's normal to have feelings for strangers. Foreign languages were never your strong suit. The rustling of dry autumn leaves, waves breaking at a distance, 1,000 wings beating at once.
Liebling, bitte. Er ist unser einziges Kind. Er kann doch auch nächstes Jahr zur Akademie gehen.
It's crosstalk. In all likelihood, they can't hear you. You have to keep trying until we get a signal through. Again?
It's cold now. I didn't say anything, Detective. Someone has been maintaining it. The wiring has been repaired.
An uncomfortable silence falls over the connection.
It's been a long winter. Long and cold. I can assure you it's not my twin brother, though it certainly does sound like me.
I can't say with certainty, but it sounds very much like anthroponetic crosstalk. It happens sometimes when sending transmissions across long stretches of pale.
Ah, yes, of course. That must be it.
Outwardly, they both exude calm, but there's something disturbing about this thought to both of them.
Natürlich halten ihn die Psychologen für vollkommen normal.
What else is there to do? Keep trying.
But someone has been maintaining it. The wiring has been repaired.
Dubois, please acknowledge.
Liebling, bitte. Er ist unser einziges Kind.
Where's departure? Please identify.
The signals are getting increasingly mixed. Plucking Archer's signal from this will be like isolating a single strand from a tangle of hair.
It's not working. The crosstalk is simply too strong. I did not expect simply locating the signal to be so difficult. We must consider several variables. Local anthroponetic conditions, the sophistication of our transceiver, the quality of our connections, and the physics of our antenna itself. Fortunately, we have a more than adequate transceiver, so I do not believe it is causing any problems. And we're also unlikely to change our local anthroponetic conditions. So, the next step is to thoroughly inspect our connections. You need to climb up there and look at them for yourself.
Someone has been maintaining it.
Something about this setup seems dimly familiar, but you'll be damned if you know what you're supposed to do about it. Images of your body smashed against the pavement flood your mind. This is dangerous.
That's true, but I can't leave my station, so it will have to be you.
Your gloves give you a solid grip on the metal bar. This feels pleasingly familiar. You don't exactly cut a lithesome figure, but after several moments of scrambling, you manage to hoist yourself atop the monument. That performance was frankly an embarrassment. The connection itself is nothing more than a little braid of exposed wire wrapped about the hoof of the horse. A copper fetter it cannot slip. The whole monument is covered in a thin but durable layer of oil and grime. It's obvious no one has cleaned it in years. It takes a few moments, but the alcohol gradually begins to break down the oils surrounding the copper wiring.
Is this really the time, Detective?
It's all right, Lieutenant. He's simply cleaning the connections.
Once the oils have been dissolved, you wipe off the connections with your sleeve and reattach the cable.
It seems to have made some difference, but unfortunately not enough to alter the overall situation.
Unser einziges Kind. Kann doch auch nächstes Jahr zur Akademie gehen.
Short of changing the shape of the antenna, I'm not sure what else we can do from here. And the lorries are all jammed together, so that's unlikely to happen. What do you mean? You adjust the antenna manually, with your hands. Ideally, narrow the receiving mode so that we can isolate the warship signal and eliminate the crosstalk. But if you don't know what you're doing, of course you could just make it worse. I'm afraid we're out of alternatives. You're just going to have to go for it.
She's right. The responsibility is yours, and yours alone. There's no turning back now. You are face to face with Philip III. The Bronze King looks toward the west. Something about his features seems bizarrely distorted. This faithful steed is in nearly as poor a condition as its rider. The sky is opaque with dark clouds. Somehow, the raindrops seem to fall more slowly from this angle. You turn to the east, but the visibility is quite poor. You see no sign of Coalition warship Archer, though you know it can't be too far away. A few of the idle lorry drivers and strikebreakers gesture at you with their cigarettes, more out of curiosity than anything else. From the window of one of the adjacent apartment buildings, an older woman leans out, her heavy breasts sagging. She yells a single word you can't make out, and then shuts the window with a violent thunk. Your grip is firm, yet controlled. The swelling in your headset guides your hands as much as your hands guide the bronze horse head. It's almost like you're hearing through the horse itself.
That's very good. Just a bit more to the left.
Nein, Liebling.
The signal is clear. The storm has passed. This is another voice, a live voice on the other end of this invisible bridge you've established.
Try it now, officer.
Lieutenant Dubois, this is Coalition warship Archer. We are acknowledging and accepting you.
Aha! Excellent! You are connected. Now be quick. I don't know how long I'll be able to preserve the signal.
This is it. You're finally getting to speak with those who hold real power. And by that they mean the ones with the guns and the warships. There is so much you wish you could ask. Your efforts have bought you some time, but you can't forget what you're really here for.
Please be advised that you are speaking on a public frequency. What is your request? You are currently speaking with Collision Warship Archer, flagship of Insurcom forces in Rebashon. No, the captain of the Archer is deeply classified intelligence. We are the second signaler. Our name is not important. All you need to know is that we hold the position of second signaler aboard the Archer.
You really don't have the faintest guess what her name could be. You were never very good at this sort of thing. There's something in the way she refers to herself, always with the first person plural. A deliberate blurring of the boundary between herself and the institution she represents. Not to mention the airborne artillery platform she works on. Her every word is backed up by the most powerful ordnance available.
Because it's standard practice for signalers to use the pluralis officialis during the course of our duties. It's meant to serve as a reminder that we don't speak only for ourselves. For instance, as second signaler, we represent Collision Warship Archer, which in turn represents Insurcom and the Coalition more generally, which in turn represents the Moralist International, which itself represents the interests of 1.2 billion people across the world.
Meaning, she's the voice of all those living souls.
It's an important responsibility, but we don't consider it any greater than those borne by countless people all across the world. Now, your request? That's difficult to say. We have a very particular view from our observation platform up here. Perhaps the best way to describe it is to say we have a very wide perspective, but not an especially detailed one. Well, it's rather dark now, but from our portal we can just make out the rolling hillside. We can see the lanterns lining the walkways through a public park. There are a few people on horses by a small pond. The homes and gardens are quite beautiful, very near like those in certain areas of Messina. Perhaps you are in a different part of the city? We've only recently been detailed to the Archer, so we are still learning the names of all the many districts. Martinez. That is to the west, yes? Stand by a moment. We are adjusting our viewfinder. Yes, we are looking at the river now. There are small islands in the middle of it. It's very nice, actually. Interesting. The west of the city looks very different from the east. There's a large motorway dividing it nearly in half. This must be the 881, no? It appears to go on for quite a while. There's a heavily industrialized district that seems to abut Montmartin. But now we seem to be quite turned about. We'll have to consult a map in the future. Now, was there something else?
Liebling, bitte. Ist unser einziges Kind.
Time is running short, officer. I estimate you have time for maybe 2 more questions.
Come again? We're picking up more interference. A very important question with a very simple answer. We want humanity to endure. Beyond that, it may be said that we are the inheritors and stewards of Dolores Day's legacy. Immeasurable. It includes interstellar travel, 3 scientific revolutions, humanism, internationalism, the welfare state, and balance of terror theory. Nothing less than the intellectual foundation of our modern order. The role of the Moralist International is twofold: to buy humanity sufficient time to perfect itself, and to patiently guide it along the road while protecting it from ideological highwaymen and eschatologists. It's an elegant idea, one of the cornerstones of the modern era. In short, it holds that durable, lasting peace is possible when the major powers are capable of inflicting unacceptable and irreversible destruction upon one another. Because no rational state is willing to accept the risk of such a calamity befalling its own people. All powers are incentivized to de-escalate conflicts before they reach the point of no return. For the most part, it has. The world is certainly not free of violent conflict, but in the modern era, we have made great strides to reduce its frequency, duration, and severity. It was established by many of the same founding party members who elected Dolores Day, and who, after her assassination, dedicated their lives to the continuation of their political and intellectual project. The communists say they are the next dialectical step in an inexorable spiral of progress. They claim to have resolved the inherent contradictions of moralism and believe they're just one revolution away from establishing a humanist paradigm. The fascists say they are both the ancestors of and the successors to Deloreanism. In other words, they believe that Dolores Day's reign simply represents a glorious phase of expansion within a greater Franco-Nigerian heritage. They criticize the DeLorean project for accepting and integrating new peoples rather than forcefully subjugating them. And then, there are our prodigal cousins, the Vazan Social Democrats, who hold our same values and have even adopted many of our same rights and iconography, though they persist in rejecting the umbrella of moralism.
For some reason, it's the Social Democrats she sounds most exasperated with.
We don't resent them. It's more that we are disappointed that they have chosen to emphasize certain points of dispute over broad areas of accord.
She speaks of them like a family member she's abandoned hope of ever maturing.
But of course, they also remain dependable partners in a number of centrist governing coalitions. The RCM exists under the umbrella of the coalition, just as the coalition exists under the umbrella of the Moral Intern. At the same time, the RCM is not exactly of the coalition. We are not that familiar with RCM lore and practice, but we believe that may be the case. As we recall, the decomptage originated with the Revacholian commune itself.
There is some truth to that.
But in a practical sense, it's the responsibility of the ethics divisions to ensure that both organizations are working towards the same ends. One now committed to upholding moralist values. Strange, isn't it? History is a river coursing ever downward. Occasionally, its course is redirected in mysterious and unexpected ways. Let us answer your question with a question. Have you ever seen evening fall over the old town of Vesperacit? The heart of the city, the old town, is a district composed of weather marble, comprising thousands of columns and arcades arranged around a series of grand plazas. During the day, it's a beautiful sight, equal to any of the great cities of Pericarnassus. But as the sun sets, the shadows cast by those columns and arcades weave together to form an intricate ombre and lattice. When you see it, you suddenly understand. It was all built for you, for this very moment.
The name Ad Vesperascit means evening comes.
By thousands of people over many centuries, in keeping with a precise plan each believed in, but never expected to see the final completion of. Not only that, but you are also part of that centuries-long plan. When you cross one of the open plazas, your own shadows is effortlessly woven into the great lattice work, a deliberate synthesis of humanity, art, and the natural world. Yes, it is. We grew up there. We have seen the lattice with our own eyes. She was. There are even those who say that Ad Vesperacit summoned Dolores Day, or that it was built in preparation for her, centuries before her arrival. That's why the old town is sometimes called the ceremonial heart of humanity. Of course, such a city does not spring from nowhere, nor does it endure without effort. Its construction was the work of many generations, and its preservation is an equally monumental responsibility. About 3,000 years.
She really had that on the tip of her tongue. It's like she has the timeline laid out right in front of her.
It does, doesn't it? And yet, there remains a great deal to be done in that span.
Officer, I've held the signal open as long as I can. Whatever you came here to ask it now.
Is everything all right? Acknowledged. To reach the committee, all you need to do is fill out the appropriate request form and submit it to the liaison for public affairs. If the liaison accepts your request, you will be invited to address the committee at their next quarterly public hearing. We believe the next hearing is scheduled for July.
She's got to be jerking your chain, right? You can't wait that long.
Not a problem. If this is a time-sensitive matter, you may file an emergency address request with the liaison for public affairs. They typically respond within a few weeks. We're afraid that is quite impossible, Lieutenant Dubois. We cannot transfer you to the committee because we are not entrusted with that responsibility. We are simply the second signaler.
Then, why are you wasting time with her? You should demand to speak with who's really in charge.
We're here, Lieutenant. Though we have to say, this is all quite out of sequence.
This line of argument is quite pointless. You should abandon it.
This isn't about you. Not really. It may have been at a certain point, but you've let go of that perspective. This is about your responsibility to all of Revachon. Now, take a deep breath. Look upward. You don't have to bear the burden alone.
What? How do you know this? Lieutenant Dubois, this is a very serious claim. Please describe the situation as succinctly as possible. We will forward your summary to the committee.
There's papers rustling in the background. She's clearing her desk, preparing to take notes. There, you've wedged your foot in the door. Now, if you can show the coalition how much they're needed, they'll have no choice but to intervene.
Please continue. We're listening. We have it. Is there anything else the committee should know?
Detective, before you answer that, I urge you to weigh your words extremely carefully.
The lieutenant is afraid you're going to say something too outre.
We're afraid we must ask you to repeat that, Lieutenant Dubois.
Afraid? What is she afraid of? Her tone has shifted. She's no longer herself. She's reading from a script. Your words have activated some sort of procedure.
Never mind that. All you need to do is repeat what you just said. Acknowledge. Listen very carefully, Lieutenant. We're going to ask you a series of questions. It is imperative that you answer as directly and truthfully as you can. Do you understand? Good. First question. Are you currently in the vicinity of Surragli, the North Arcade Islands, or near Pale Offshore Platform in Sulindico? Please answer the question. Very good. Next question. Would you describe the phenomenon as internal to the Isola or external to the Isola?
What she means is, actually, you have no idea what those words could mean in this context.
Next question. At the time, did you experience sense objects? Yes. Examples may include sound, memory, light. Let's go on. Final question. Were you alone?
You are part of a large family. You are never alone. There's no need to overthink this.
We repeat. Were you alone?
You hear the sound of a page ripping.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Please stand by while we transmit our summary.
A long winter.
I'm not sure how much longer I can keep the signal clear, officer.
Lieutenant Dubois, this is Collision Worship Archer. Please acknowledge. Thank you for standing by. We are authorized to report the Committee of Responsibility for Rebel has acknowledged and accepted your request. They would like you to address your matter to the committee directly, as their earliest convenience. Remain where you are. Collision Shuttle Laurel is setting a course for your position. They will arrive momentarily. Stand by.
To the southwest, several stars begin to move in unison. The minor constellation of Coalition Shuttle Laurel begins executing a graceful turn, drawn by an invisible wire.
So, they're really coming.
The lieutenant slowly removes his headphones and turns up toward you.
Well, what now? You've accomplished your side task. You've contacted Coalition Warship Archer. I suppose what I'm asking is whether we are about to lose you to the Moral Intern. What options? What in God's name are you talking about, Detective?
The lieutenant takes a moment to compose his thoughts.
I don't know where this case will lead us, Detective. But in a sense, that doesn't matter. Our job is to follow the evidence where it leads. Consequences be damned. Because that's what it means to be an officer of the RCM.
The lieutenant's final words are nearly swallowed by the roar of the aerostatic's main rotors.
Lieutenant Dubois, this is Collision Warship Archer. We have been instructed to inform you that the Laurel arrived at your position. Please acknowledge.
No shit. How are they supposed to hear your acknowledgement over the thundering of their own rotors?
Thank you. The Committee of Responsibility for Rebel has authorized us to offer you an immediate extraction. Do you accept?
The roundabout, Martinez North, nighttime. Somehow, the streetlights only make the scene more lonely. You can hear someone retching in a nearby courtyard. The programmer eyes you curiously. She does not understand why you're hesitating. Whatever her misgivings about the Coalition, the fact is that you've summoned an aerostatic with your voice, an achievement she never thought she'd witness. The lieutenant looks up toward you. He starts to open his mouth, then appears to think better of it. He's spoken his piece, he thinks. It's up to you now. There is something, a whisper, circulating among the city's footnoted alleyways and along its electrical wires. But what it's saying, you can't tell. It seems to be a message meant for someone else.
We are far past that point, Lieutenant. There is only one question now. Are you ready, or are you not? Acknowledge. Laurel has initiated the extraction procedure. Stand by.
Marianne hat mir erzählt, dass Oscar nicht mehr derselbe ist, seit er auf einem Luftschiff zurückgekommen ist.
Weeks later, no answers about extracted cop. The condition and whereabouts of an RCM officer extracted by a Coalition aerostatic 2 weeks ago remain unknown. The dramatic maneuver witnessed by dozens near the North Roundabout has reportedly increased tensions between the citizens of Martinez, the RCM, and Coalition authorities. Early reports that the lieutenant was investigating entropinetic phenomena along the coast have not been confirmed. According to an official statement given by the RCM, the lieutenant was in Martinez as part of a murder investigation. A Coalition representative declined repeated requests for comment.